Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Hey, what's going on, everybody? So later on today, I'm going to have Jen and Lisa from the Prince and the Pervert podcast joining us here on the Jeffrey Epstein Show. We're going to discuss everything Jeffrey Epstein, obviously. We're going to get to know the ladies a little bit better, and we're going to have a nice quality discussion that I'm sure at some point is going to find its way to Jen and Lisa's favorite person on the planet, the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, a.k.a. the Prince of Punkasses, a.k.a. the Prince of Lies, a.k.a. Prince Andrew's bitch ass. So that'll be later on today. As soon as I get it recorded, I'll put it right out, and it'll be there for you folks to go ahead and swoop on in and listen to. Today, though, we're going to talk about Jeffrey Epstein's bodyguard, an ex-MMA fighter, a Sambo champion, and a man who only suffered one loss in the octagon, and that loss was to Frank Shamrock. This is a man who is serious about his business, a man who is the kind of guy that would be able to bend your ass into a pretzel and not think twice about it. And this is the man that would be involved with picking Jeffrey Epstein up, driving him around, etc., etc. Now, it's no shock to me that Jeffrey Epstein would hire somebody like this to be his bodyguard, right? With all of the people that could possibly be out to get Jeffrey Epstein when he was still alive, you know, if you're Jeffrey Epstein, you have to think that some of these parents from some of these girls might want to take out some vigilante justice on you. So you go and get yourself an MMA fighter from Russia to be your bodyguard. Personally, it would take 50 MMA fighters with machine guns to protect you from me if it was my daughter, but that's besides the point here. So, this article is from The Intelligencer, and the headline is, Jeffrey Epstein's bodyguard on his former boss's lifestyle, cruelty, and suicide. The article is authored by M.L. Nestle. When Jeffrey Epstein pleaded guilty to soliciting an underage girl for prostitution, an underage girl cannot be a prostitute. In 2008, and served a 13-month sentence under the cushiest of conditions, it was his bodyguard and driver, former UFC fighter Igor Zinoviev, who frequently picked him up at the Palm Beach jail and shuttled him between the office and various appointments. Zinoviev also trained Epstein in a regimen that included weightlifting and some light fighting drills. And whenever Epstein jetted around to his various estates, Zinoviev accompanied him, riding along on the pretend billionaire's Lolita Express. So, Epstein obviously had concerns about people trying to cause him harm, and what he tried to do is nip that right in the bud right away by bringing in a Sambo champion and an MMA fighter. And if you take a look at Igor Zinoviev, you'll see that he has that look, right? That typical, I will break you, Ivan Drago kind of look. An intimidating cat. Especially, if you know anything about MMA and you know the guy fought professionally, the last thing you want to do is end up in, a confrontation with a dude that's going to rip off your arm and take it home and put it on his mantle, right? So Epstein found the right kind of guy to do his security work. There's no doubt about that, as far as being a skilled fighter and having the ability to break somebody off if the time came. The mysterious Russian MMA fighter drew some attention from the media after Epstein's arrest and indictment by federal authorities last month, but he has not made it easy for reporters to find him. There have been, so far as we can determine, no published or broadcast interviews with Zinoviev about his relationship with Epstein. And you have to expect that, right? I'm sure Jeffrey Epstein paid Igor a hefty amount of money, right? A nice fat sum of cash, probably in Gucci bags, right? You know how Epstein rolled. He wasn't trying to have any kind of money trail, but I'm sure that that Igor was paid very well for his service, and I am also sure that Epstein made it known to people that Igor was on his payroll, and I'm sure he inferred that if you got stupid, that he'd have this guy break your legs. We know Epstein wasn't above threats. We know that Epstein wasn't above having people follow investigators, have people follow lawyers, have people follow prosecutors. We know he wasn't above any of that. So don't think for a minute he wouldn't be hiring somebody that he knew would go the extra mile for him. I spoke on the record with Zionoviev for an unpublished interview in 2015 when I was on staff at the Daily Beast. After numerous attempts in recent weeks, I was able to reach him by phone on Monday, August 12th. As before, we spoke on the record. He talked about his response to Epstein's apparent suicide and his memories of working for the man. A good chunk of the half-hour conversation involved revisiting things he had told me 4 years ago. To be honest, I didn't expect that he'd try to back away from the assertions he made in our original interview, but he did. And that's telling, right? If a guy like Igor Zionoviev, an ex-MMA fighter, a Russo Sambo master, and an all-around badass dude, is scared to go on the record about Jeffrey Epstein, you really think that the girls, the survivors who suffered at Epstein's hands, you really think that they wanted to come forward if even this hardened-ass fighter, Russian badass, was scared to go on record? Now that just goes to show you how brave people like Maria Farmer are, Annie Farmer. These ladies came forward when all the chips were on the line for them. They had everything to lose. And still, to this day, Maria Farmer is suffering the consequences of coming forward and outing these people. And nobody has done anything. Nobody has lifted a finger to help her. And it makes me really agitated. Maria Farmer is legit one of the nicest people on this planet, folks. I've had the joy of getting to know her, and I have to tell you right now, she is legit one of the nicest, sweetest people on the face of this earth. Even through all of her struggles, all the things that she has been through, all of the things she still goes through because of these people, and she remains a bright spot on this planet. Somebody who I look forward to speaking to on a daily basis at this point. And the treatment that Maria has received at the hands of the authorities, at the hands of Epstein, at the hands of journalists, it is unacceptable. It is unacceptable, and it will not be tolerated. These people must be brought to justice, okay? If you have somebody like Jeffrey Epstein out there, and still Ghislaine Maxwell, who is so dangerous that someone like Igor Zinoviev is scared of them, how do you think people like Maria Farmer or Annie Farmer or Virginia Roberts or any of the other survivors, how do you think they're going to feel? They're not trained fighters. They're not people who were prepared for this sort of thing in their life. They were thrust into this unwillingly by some sick, disgusting-ass predators. And still, no justice for them, no help. That's why it's so important that we keep up this fight. That's why it's so important that we keep going until these people are prosecuted. And the reason I grind so hard at this point, and why I'm here every single day, dropping episodes, etc., is simple. It is very simple, because people like Maria Farmer, they deserve justice. Maria deserves to wake up one morning and see all of these people arrested, and she deserves that at the very least for what she has been through. And I can't stress enough, folks, how important it is that we keep up the fight, that we keep up the full court press on all of these people. Now, recently, we have Whitney Webb jumping in and talking a little bit about things with Maria, etc., and that's good, right? Maria's story needs to be out there, and everybody needs to be aware of what Maria Farmer went through and how brave she was to step forward when she did. And one of these days, we'll have Maria come onto the podcast whenever she wants, and she'll tell you her story in her words, because let me tell you something, folks. The power behind the words in Maria Farmer's story it's one of the most moving things I've ever heard. And anytime I feel a little bit like, I don't know, like I'm kind of being worn down by this whole entire thing, like the grind is becoming just a lot to deal with, I just think back to what they've dealt with, Maria Farmer and Annie and Virginia and Courtney, and what all of the survivors have dealt with, and I just have to shake my head and laugh at myself, because if you think we grind and you think that it's a struggle for us to battle through and read this sort of thing, imagine living through it. And at the end of the day, we have to remember that that is the most important thing to keep in focus, that we find justice for people like Maria Farmer. He talked about his response to Epstein's apparent suicide and his memories of working for the man. A good chunk of the half-hour conversation involved revisiting things he had told me 4 years ago. To be honest, I didn't expect that he'd try to back away from the assertions he made in our original interview, but he did. He also seemed, it is safe to say, quite nervous about saying anything at all. Below is a transcript of our conversation this week with minor cuts and edits for length and clarity. Please note that Zionoviev is not a native English speaker. In places, we have left his words verbatim, even when his meaning is not entirely clear, as we have been unable to reach him again by phone to clarify any of his assertions. Again, that should tell you folks everything you need to know about the people we're dealing with. A trained Sambo master. And if you're familiar with MMA and Sambo and, how deadly of an art it is, then you understand that people that are involved in this martial art and MMA in general do not scare easily, okay? They don't scare easily. You have to be a very, very dangerous person or organization to scare somebody like Igor Zinoviev. Last week, we talked. I didn't realize you were an MMA fighter. That's okay. Oh, yeah. You were Jeffrey Epstein's driver. You weren't just his bodyguard and trainer. Igor responds, yep. Just going back, how did he find you? Igor responds, well, it's just going back. A friend of mine introduced me to him, basically as a friend, After that, he asked me to work with him. But honestly, I had a pretty good job, so I'm not looking at any jobs. Then he called me and asked if I could do some stuff. Like do his driver, do like bodyguarding, and just train him and do other stuff. And I thought, just time to change something. I said, yeah, I could do that. So Epstein and Igor were introduced by a mutual friend, obviously, according to Igor here. And Epstein tried to woo him into a job and bring him on board. At first, Igor denied the offer and declined it and said, I got a good job. But after thinking on it, obviously, he changed his mind and decided to work for Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I wonder what that motivation was. Obviously, it was probably the carrot dangled in front of him by Epstein, the 24-karat gold carrot that Jeffrey Epstein liked to entice people with. So I'm guessing it was money was the main motivating factor to begin with. What year was this? Igor responds, I can't remember, to be honest. I would have to look at the paper. I would have to look at the papers for that. By this time, you had stopped competing as an MMA fighter? Igor responds, not really, actually. You were still competing? Igor responds, yes, maybe I stopped already. Yeah. I was in the Virgin Islands, in Palm Beach. I started working in Palm Beach. I would see him only when, where the hell is it? When he has to go to big jail, actually. So again, remember, they're listing his responses verbatim, and he speaks broken English, so you kind of have to do a little bit of translation work here as you're reading or listening. Question. Oh, right. Igor responds, that's when he was at Palm Beach, the first time. I start before working with him in New York and the Virgin Islands. Reporter. You were in New York also? Igor responds, yeah. Reporter. You drove him in all three places? Igor responds, in New York I didn't drive him. In New York he had a driver, whatever his name was. He was like old family. I was just training with him in New York and travel with him. And I just drove him here in Palm Beach, because other places he had different drivers. They're just personnel, who just drive him. Somebody drive him in New Mexico, somebody drive him in Virgin Islands, actually. I just drove him here in Palm Beach. So that's interesting. Epstein had a bunch of other drivers. We haven't really heard about any of those other drivers. You would think that people that were driving Epstein around might have a bit of knowledge about who was coming and going, who was hanging out with Epstein, if there were any underage girls in the cars, did any of these drivers ever see any other underage girls, etc., etc. Again, where are the subpoenas? Reporter asks, you went with him to all other properties? Did you also go with him to New Mexico? Igor responds, yeah. Reporter, you worked with him and traveled with him 24/7. So that means you were on his plane with him, correct? Igor responds, yeah. You lived in his guest house? Igor responds, yeah. You lived alone in the guest house? Igor responds, of course, in Palm Beach. When we stay at Palm Beach, we have a guest house, and there's a property manager who lived there. He was working there before me. It was a Polish guy. Yeah. Question from the reporter, did he have bodyguard abilities like you? Igor responds, no. Question from the reporter, you were introduced to Epstein by a middleman, so how was it when you first met him? Response from Igor, pretty good. I never heard anything from him that, let's say, was improper or rude or something. He was always polite, always a nice person. Basically, he's always smiling. Yeah, of course he was always smiling because he was getting away with basically murder. The guy was getting away with whatever the hell he wanted, and nobody cared. Nobody cared. Nobody stood up to tell him to stop. None of the authorities tried to stop him. It was just business as usual for these people. Reporter's question. When you first talked to him, did he ask you anything about your skills or say what he wanted? Igor replies, no, I think he already knows that. They probably have reserved people who just check my background and everything. He asks something, and I give him some simple questions, how I do, and how I'm training, and all other things. So, basically, Epstein did his due diligence about who Igor was before he brought him on board, probably had whoever doing the background checks and searching out for somebody that would fit the role he was looking for. And he ended up finding Igor and bringing him on board as his bodyguard / driver. Question. What would you teach him? Response from Igor. Basic workout, lift weights, and a little practicing some self-defense stuff. Question. Like karate? Answer by Igor. Like boxing and kicking, knees? Question from the reporter. Was he a good athlete? Answer from Igor, he's in pretty good shape. It was how I remember. He's not the best, but he did all right. Question, you told me last time we talked you would plan to have a workout, but often he would fail to show up, and that annoyed you. Answer, he worked out, but sometimes probably a business meeting or something else. It was like I wasted a long time in the gym. He kept me waiting a couple of hours, like 4 hours. And again, this goes in the face of Jeffrey Epstein being on steroids, like we heard from that doctor. That never really resonated with me, the fact that Epstein might have been on steroids. If he was on steroids, he would have been a gym rat. He would have been in the gym. He wouldn't have been missing sessions with Igor, that's for sure. So I think we can pretty much dispel the rumor of the steroid use. Again, I have no evidence that says for sure he wasn't on steroids, but I don't see anything that leads me to believe that was the cause of his anger or him being such a sicko. What were some of the places that you drove him to? Answer, when I used to work here in Palm Beach, just business meetings basically. It was mostly downtown near lawyers' offices. I drop him there and he'd go upstairs and I waiting in the car. So Igor was acting as basically a bodyguard driver, right? He would take Epstein to wherever the hell Epstein had to go. He would drop him off in front. He would hang out in the car and wait on Epstein to come out. And if shit got real, he'd be at very close proximity so that Epstein can call on him to do whatever it is that Epstein needed him to do. Question. Ever talk about his case? Why he was in trouble? Igor's answer. No, he never talked about that stuff. Question. Never talked about any of that stuff? Answer. No. Question. Really? Answer. No. In our conversation in 2015, you described his relationship with teenage girlfriends. So many times I tried to stop him. I try to tell him my opinion about that. He don't listen to me. That's the reason why I'm not working for him no more. I make him do that to let me go. Do you remember saying that? Igor's response, it's not the teenage girls. I never see the teenage girls. I tell you I never see teenage girls. Plenty of times when I work for him, I never see anything improper or teenage girls around him. That's what I say. Now the reporter's starting to get a little questioning here because Igor is denying what he told this reporter on record the first time around. Question from the reporter. So now you say you only saw him with women older than 18, 20? Answer. All that I say, he was always been with girlfriends, and there was a couple girls, I don't remember their names. She was 25 and worked for him as assistant, maybe 25 or 23, whatever. I don't know the age. Well, he just says that they're not under 18, but he don't know the age. So again, we can't use Igor as the guy who's going to tell us what age girls are, right? That's not his position. He's not an ID checker. He's not somebody who's trained in that. So again, who knows how old these girls were, but chances are a lot of them were underage. Question. Okay, but you definitely told me that last time we talked. Answer. No, it's not that. He working like work release on other stuff, and I just tell him, he would order his girlfriends around, and I told him, calm down. It's not just teenage girls. I never see teenage girls in my life at his house. That's what is doing. That's a misunderstanding completely. That's what I'm saying. Most of the time with reporters, they give me that kind of questions. Who told you I see teenage girls? I never see the teenage girls in my life. And they said I was... The reporter interrupts him mid-answer. Here's another thing you said last time about Epstein and the girls you saw at his house. Specifically about moments when you were trying to offer him advice about his conduct. Sometimes he tries to make a joke. He'd say, thank you, Grandma, I don't need your opinion. So when you tried to do something good, he would try to make a joke in front of his girls. I never give anyone any questions. It's one of my rules, actually. I'll be honest with you. I never ask any of my clients what they do for a living or how they do whatever they do. I just do my job, and that's it. Do you remember saying that? Answer by Igor. Yes, that's what I say. I feel like the cop's watching me whenever he's on work release. I tell him, don't be stupid and stuff, like, don't put your girlfriend in the car and drive together. Don't. Watch out. All the extra attention. So basically, Igor is giving Jeffrey Epstein advice on how to be a little bit more slick about things, and Epstein is so brazen that he doesn't give a damn about any of that stuff. He doesn't care about optics. Do you know why? Because he was being protected. He knew that protection went so high that the optics didn't matter. What you or I thought did not matter. We're just, shit on the bottom of his shoe. Question. Epstein made fun of you in front of the girls, right? Answer. Yeah, that was his thing, yeah. Question. You said you never ask your employers questions. Answer. Yeah, that's normal answer. People like him just do whatever he wants to do. Because people like people talking and just they already have some release, and I understand and just read some papers about his whatever, teenage girls. But that was how he answers. That's it. So I don't know. Question. Here's another quote from our last interview. He had a couple of girlfriends. They have no idea the degree of what they are doing, but you can't tell nothing to them because they support him kind of. For a while, this one girl can be more attached to him. He just fire her. Fire them and keep them away. For example, I give you some idea. You have private plane and you have 3 girlfriends and one girl can be more attached to him. And next week, he don't take that girl. He takes another one and he just switch them. He brings them on a couple of trips and then get different girls. That's what he's doing. Remember that? Kind of, Igor says. Well, that was typical of Jeffrey Epstein's MO. He would have, the core 4 were always around him, but he'd be rotating the other girls out, bringing different girls with him for whatever purposes it may be, to pass them along to his friends or for him to abuse, whatever it may be. We know for a fact that Epstein had a rotating door of survivors and victims that he traveled with. Reporter Igor's response, wait a minute, reporter. Igor, I understand this is sensitive. Igor cuts him off. It's not sensitive. It's just kind of a little incorrect. Reporter, it's actually what you said. I can send it to you. Here's something else you said. It could be tricky, Normally, he always checks his newspapers. Nothing about me? I say no. He say, they forget about me? And when I mentioned Epstein was being exposed for messing with teenage girls, you said, I'm not surprised at all. I'm just surprised how low he can be outside the real world. Someday it's going to call him and it will be real jail. He has so much money he can pay it off. Me, personally, if I caught him with my daughter or something to do with that, I'm not going to call the police. I do something else much worse. That guy could try to sue me and manipulate the situation with his money. That's the American way. I know he screwed up a lot of fashion girls also. That's a different story. The reporter says, do you remember saying that? And, yeah, I obviously agree with Igor in that regard. I mean, I'm certainly not some trained, professional MMA fighter, but I agree with his sentiment that if Epstein went anywhere near my daughter, I'd bend him into a pretzel and there'd be a hole somewhere in the Mojave Desert for his ass. Believe that. But it's crazy to see that Epstein would not only disrespect Igor, but he straight up would talk shit about him in front of the girls to try and flex, knowing that Igor, as one of his employees, wasn't going to do anything about it, and Epstein was trying to show his superiority by flexing on this big, strong guy, showing the girls that even this big, strong fighter can't stand up to me. Do you really think you can? Just another psychological tool that Epstein was using. Igor responds, I remember one thing. I say, like, if I be the father and somebody screw up my daughter, I don't give a shit with how much money he have. I definitely do some bad things. That's what I said. Before that stuff, I don't know. I'm just really like... Igor's cut off again by the reporter. Igor, I'm not making stuff up. I was very careful. Igor responds, I'm really careful too. Reporter, it was 4 years ago. You may not remember what you told me. I kept very good notes of what you and I said. It must come across as very harsh, but it's the truth. I'm happy to understand a little better. He's not alive. You don't have anything to be afraid of anymore. Igor responds, I'm not afraid. Beyond that, just he is dead. I don't want anything to be incorrect. There's too much shit in here, you know already. He's dead, and just like freaking people, just leave him alone. Really? Just leave him alone? Sorry, Igor, that's never going to happen, my friend. How about you come forward and you tell us a little bit about what you know? Question, hold on. When did you find out he died? Answer, Saturday or Sunday or whenever. Question, what did you think when you found that out? Answer, what did I think? Question, yeah. Answer, are you sure you want to hear what I was going to think? Question, yeah. Answer, somebody helped him do that. Basically saying that somebody killed him. He didn't commit suicide. Question, you think somebody helped him kill himself? Answer, yeah. Question, okay, why? Answer, listen, that's going a little too deep. So this is his bodyguard, folks, somebody that was around him on a regular basis for a very long time, and he has questions about Epstein's death as well. He doesn't believe that Epstein killed himself. Question, I'm just trying to understand that maybe you'd be happy he was dead, or you would be upset. I don't know, are you even feeling anything? Answer, I'm not sad. I didn't have anything against him, like a bad thing, I don't care about his life completely. I don't give a, let's say, like, crap about how he died, how he lived, or how he's managed. Question, how many years did you live at his house? Answer, 5 or 6 years in Palm Beach. Question, that's a long time, Igor. Yeah, so he lived in Epstein's house for 5 or 6 years. So you have to think that he was around for some shit, right? He was around to possibly have witnessed some shit. So when the RICO case comes, I'm sorry, Igor, you're getting slapped with a RICO charge as well. Question, you don't have any emotion after learning he's dead? Answer, no. Question, did you think that would happen to him? Answer, it's unexpected. Well, reporter cuts him off. I realize others tried to talk to you. Did he ever offer money? Did anybody ever try to silence you? Answer, no. Question, Epstein never tried to get people to give you money. I wonder what he was capable of doing since he settled a lot of lawsuits. Igor interrupts the reporter. Nobody ever wanted to offer me money. I don't care about money. I want everybody to just leave me alone. Just one thing. When somebody from newspaper writes and from everywhere call me, Red Army effing commando, what that mean exactly? So basically, he feels like he's being disrespected by reporters that are saying he's a Soviet commando or whatever they might be calling him. And he feels like that's disrespectful to him. So you have to understand how the Russian culture is. If they feel disrespected, they're going to lash out, or they're just not going to talk with a reporter, right? And I feel like that's what happened here with Igor. He feels like he was being attacked and he was being pulled into this. So the typical Eastern European Russian response is to give you 2 fingers and just ignore you. If it's untrue, question, if it's untrue, that would be over the top. Answer, that's terrible. So after that, they call me a mobster. Question, mobster? Answer, yes. Question, okay, I didn't know that. Answer, I'm standing with girls. The girls just looking at me, and the girls get scared. So I don't know if you want to get me to say something, and I don't want to. I want to deal with no one. Question, I get that, but you and I have a history at this point. One thing you told me, for instance, is he got a heads up when the authorities were going to come to the house the night before. Igor responds, listen, what you say is between you and me. Reporter cuts him off. You told me he would get phone calls the night before, and 8 o'clock the police are going to come. He would get a heads up from local police. Igor's silent when asked this question by the reporter. So the reporter goes on. You told me that, Igor. Want me to read the quote? Igor responds, well, you can read whatever you want right now. You can put yourself in big trouble. Imagine that. This guy is telling this reporter that he'll put himself in big trouble if he reports the case. That is the reach that Jeffrey Epstein and his organization had, folks. They had so much reach that reporters were scared of them. Editors were scared of them. So many people were fearful of them and what the Epstein organization could do to them. And you think to the survivors and the bravery that they have shown coming forward in the face of that maelstrom? I don't know how you can't just get up and cheer and clap these girls on. They should all be given awards. Every single one of these girls should be giving an award for courage, because the courage that they showed in the face of this many-armed octopus of an organization that Jeffrey Epstein had, I have to tell you what, man, it's inspiring stuff. Question. You said he always do something wrong. There was some nights in question, they're at home arrest and police. Before they come to the house, they call him and tell him they coming in at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's all corruption, you know? It's all bullshit. Igor, listen. Don't put yourself in trouble. Seriously. So, the reporter is recounting what Igor told him in the first interview that they had. And now, when the reporter brings it back up, Igor is telling the reporter, look, you're going to get yourself in trouble. You need to shut up. Don't talk about this. This is dangerous stuff. You're dealing with very dangerous people. And the reporter says, you know, of course the reporter's like, well, we talked about this stuff. This is the stuff that you have told me. Question. Excuse me, reporter. We talked about this. Answer. I understand. We got this. Reporter, I'm telling you to give you a chance to remember because we talked about this stuff. I know it's hard. I don't know what you mean about put myself in trouble. Igor responds, let that go. Seriously. Let that go. So he is adamant about the reporter changing directions in the interview here. He is very adamant about not touching on the subject that the reporter wants to get to, meaning the corruption of the local cops. And we know that there was the negligence that was shown by the local police department, the prosecutors especially in Palm Beach, is so disgusting that it's almost impossible to put into words how disgusting it is. Question. Why is it so important? Are you worried about the local cops? Igor's response, listen, you're really smart, and I'm not going to offer that over the phone right now, okay? You're really smart. You have no idea. Please. So, yeah, basically he's answering without answering right there, saying, hell yeah, I'm afraid of the local cops. I'm afraid of the authorities and what they'll do to me if I speak out about Jeffrey Epstein. Imagine, in the United States of America, people are scared to come forward with the truth about a sex trafficking operation. It's unacceptable. It's not normal, and that's not the way society should be. Anyone who's involved in something like this should come forward right away, and it doesn't matter who else is involved as far as who's committing the crimes. I don't care if you're a powerful politician or you're a powerful rich person. It does not matter to me. I'm so over that shit. I'm so tired of the two-tier justice system. I want it stamped and stomped out. Question. What do you mean by that? Answer. I can't explain to you. I can't explain to you over the phone any of this. So obviously he's worried about the phone being tapped or being recorded, and he doesn't want to go on record. Question. You said that last time, and we didn't talk for years. You can tell the world who this guy was. You were with him for a long time. You know what I mean? Igor, silence. Reporter. I totally understand that you think he could have helped. I totally understand that you think he could have had help committing suicide. Answer. First of all, I have to go right now. I have another client. So he doesn't want to answer any more questions. He already said that he doesn't believe Epstein killed himself. So he doesn't want to go back to that question, obviously. Reporter, still training people? Igor, yes, but just be careful. I'm not kidding. Reporter, what's your email so I can send you? Igor cuts him off. Don't do any kind of that stuff. Just don't play it. Seriously. Reporter, can you tell me why? Igor, I can't. Again, you see a trained fighter, a badass, a Sambo expert who is fearful of Jeffrey Epstein's power and reach and the organizational arm of Jeffrey Epstein. If this man is afraid and this man doesn't want to speak out, how do you think other witnesses feel? How do you think the survivors feel? They aren't trained fighters. They aren't MMA fighters. They aren't Sambo experts. And to see how courageous someone like Maria Farmer is to come out and put Jeffrey Epstein and Wexner and the rest of the scuzzbags on blast when a trained MMA fighter, a badass, wouldn't do it, that just shows you the sort of person Maria Farmer is. That just shows you the sort of character that she possesses. Question. May I ask you one more question? Go ahead, Igor says. Reporter. Have you been talking to anyone? The government? The FBI? Have they come to you? Long pause by Igor. Great talking to you. Seriously, we talk later. Reporter. Really? Igor. Bye. Reporter. All right. Igor. Bye. So, look, folks, this rabbit hole is very deep. Very, very deep indeed. And when you have trained mixed martial artists like this guy here who is fearful of outing Jeffrey Epstein, it tells you everything you need to know about Jeffrey Epstein's criminal enterprise. It tells you everything you need to know about the organization that was led by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and backed by the sick, twisted intelligence communities of, at the very least, the CIA and the Mossad. This is what we're up against, folks, and this is why it's so crucial and so important that we don't get too frustrated and we continue the full court press, because people like Maria Farmer and Annie Farmer, they deserve that. They deserve us coming forward and standing shoulder to shoulder with them and letting these people know that this kind of shit will not go on any longer. And furthermore, we won't accept any sort of intimidation tactics. We won't accept your nonsense. All right? It's not just the survivors standing alone anymore. There are hordes of people standing behind them and shoulder to shoulder with them that are demanding answers. And the government is not going to get away with not prosecuting this time. We're not going to accept it. And it's coming from all corners. Okay? All corners of independent content creators and independent journalists. You have people like Whitney Webb going hard after this. You know, it's coming down to a point where there's going to be a time where we're going to start to see the dominoes fall, and these people are going to start having to step forward and stand before the man and face the justice that they have been able to avoid for so long. Because at the end of the day, before this case came to the point where it's at right now, with all of the interest around it and all of the people who have learned and pulled the shade back and seen what is going on in the dark, before that occurred, the government was able to ignore the survivors' calls for justice. They were able to sweep it under the rug. But now, everyone's voice together, everyone's voice put together, working towards the same goal of bringing these people to justice, cannot be ignored. And going forward, I think we're going to see a lot more people getting completely and utterly horrified by what is in the details of this story, because most of the people have only scratched the surface. Most people have never really dove deep into this story to truly understand what is going on. And now that people are starting to do that, now that it's starting to become more than just a surface level issue, you're starting to see the outrage grow. And the more outrage in this case, the better off it is for the survivors, because at the end of the day, they can ignore a couple of voices. But when all of our voices are joined as one and directed in the same direction, there is zero chance that they can ignore us. All right, folks, if you'd like to contact me, you could do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. And you can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, folks, I'll be back later on today with an interview with Lisa and Jen from the Prince and the Pervert podcast. Until then, folks, I hope you all have a fantastic Saturday.